What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Jacob Reviews, and on today's very first ever review on this channel, we're talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Listen, if you're a fan of the original Ghostbusters, you're going to love Ghostbusters Afterlife. I mean, the proton packs, the car. No, I'm just joking. Today, we are talking about none other than Spider-Man No Way Home. You have been warned that there are spoilers ahead. You are being warned again right now. So if you haven't seen it, click out of this video. Come back to us later. For those of you who have seen it, let's get into it. Alright, for me, Spider-Man No Way Home is top 3 all time. Give me Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home was a beautiful blend of the past, the present, and the future. Spider-Man No Way Home was a love letter to what came before Tom Holland and was an amazing kick-ass Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. For me personally, Tom Holland is the best Peter Parker and the best Spider-Man blend. I think Tobey Maguire was a great Peter Parker, not a great Spider-Man. I think Andrew Garfield was a great Spider-Man in costume, was not a very good Peter Parker. For me, Tom Holland blends both of those together. Here's a couple of reasons why he's the best Peter Parker. He's had to be a real high school student. He's had to worry about getting to class on time and saving the world. He's had to worry about, do I go to this decathlon? Do I save the world? He's had to learn how to drive a car for the first time on screen. He's had to learn how to keep secrets from his best friends, but also be very bad at keeping secrets from his best friends. I mean, he's played with Legos on screen, for goodness sake. Like, that is a real 14-year-old to 15-year-old kid that we've seen grow up. And at the end of this movie, we see the future Peter Parker that Tobey Maguire kind of started out as. And that's what I love, is we've seen the growth of a real Peter Parker. We've seen the growth of a real high school student. He's dealt with real high school student problems. That's why he's the best Peter Parker. Here's why I think he's the best Spider-Man. The end of this movie, he gives up the biggest sacrifice out of any Spider-Man ever recorded on screen. He gives up himself, his personal life. He gives up everything to continue being Spider-Man. Spoilers. Just so you know, I've already warned you a couple times. But at the end of this movie, Doctor Strange has to cast a spell to make everybody forget who Peter Parker is. Not just Spider-Man. You see, the beginning of the movie, it was a small sacrifice. Oh, just forget that I'm Spider-Man. But at the end of this movie, it was just forget that I'm Peter Parker, which is the epitome of, with great power comes great responsibility. Tom Holland understood that he's had this great power and that his great power has led him to one of the biggest decisions of his life, which is, do I be responsible, or do I put everybody in danger? Do I let the multiverse shatter around me, and do I put everybody in my life that I know and love in serious danger? And he said no. He took that responsibility, and he sacrificed his own personal life. No one in the world now knows who Peter Parker is. He doesn't exist in anybody's mind. And for me, that's what makes him the best Spider-Man, is he's really lived out the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Now let's talk a little bit about the multiverse that we saw. For those of you who are casual Marvel fans, I'm sure some of you are starting to panic because Phase 4 of Marvel's not messing around. The multiverse is here, people, and the multiverse is here to stay. Secret Wars, Secret Invasion. We've got Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This is about to get wild, and what Marvel is saying is they're like, listen, if you're not watching our Disney Plus shows, if you're not staying up to date with everything you need to know about Marvel, you're in for a headache in the future, because coming from somebody who reads the comics, who knows a lot about the multiverse, it's confusing for me. So let alone the casual fan who maybe, oh, I'm just a Spider-Man fan. Oh, I'm just a Thor fan. I like the Guardians, but I'm not a big fan of the other stuff. Guess what? It's going to start being head scratching. It's going to start being head smashing. It's going to start being head banging, because the multiverse is about to get real confusing. It's about to blend the Fox world. It's about to blend the Sony worlds. And it's about to blend the Marvel Cinematic Universe all into one giant concoction. And it is about to get crazy. I mean, we saw, and this is what I loved about this movie. They gave us a sample of what the multiverse has to offer. You know, this movie could have gone, and I've said this about Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. This movie could have gone off the rails real quick. The multiverse being such a ginormous thing to explore, they could have just thrown in character, and next thing you know, you've got a cluster frick of villains and Spider-Man, and you don't know what the hell is going on. What they did so well and so beautifully is they said, hey, we're gonna bring back Tobey Maguire. We're gonna bring back Andrew Garfield. We're gonna keep it just our 3 favorite Spider-Man, the ones that we all know and love. And we're only gonna bring back a couple of villains from each one of their worlds, right? So right at the very end, you saw those silhouettes of all those characters in the sky. You saw Rhino, you saw Scorpion, you saw Kraven the Hunter, you saw Black Cat, you saw a bunch of different characters in the sky. That's a beautiful job by Marvel, because all those characters, if dealt with by any other studio, would have all been thrown into this movie and we would have been trying to figure out what the hell was going on. But Marvel said, we're going to show you the silhouette. We're going to show you how big the multiverse is, but also keeping our story kind of small and kind of personal. Because we all know and love Tobey Maguire. We all know and love Andrew Garfield. We all know and love Tom Holland. So if they would have gotten away from them and tried to focus on the big overall overarching story, which is the multiverse and all the villains of the multiverse, I think this movie could have lost its magic that it had. So love the way they handled the multiverse, but at the same time, if you're a casual Disney fan, if you're a casual Marvel fan, you better start watching the what ifs. You better start watching the Hawkeyes. You better start watching whatever they're about to put out there, because the multiverse and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is about to start blowing people's minds. Now, let's talk about our beloved Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield came out swinging. No pun intended. Andrew Garfield, a lot of people think he stole the show, and don't get me wrong, he is up there for that role, but I have a different version of who I think actually ended up stealing the show. But Andrew Garfield did an incredible job. He brought his amazing, fun, hilarious Spider-Man to our Spider-Verse, and you could tell he dedicated himself back to this role because his charisma was out of this world. You could tell just oozing off the screen, Andrew Garfield was having a lot of fun. And then, of course, Andrew Garfield has his redemption moment. And I called it before the movie. Many of you who are watching, many of my very good friends, you know I called this. I said Andrew Garfield needs his redemption moment from the Gwen Stacy murder. I mean, let's be honest, he did kind of murder her, not on purpose. But he had that moment with MJ. It was so beautiful too. And I love the fact that he ended up saving MJ, and this time, and this is the little details that Marvel does so well, he focused on pressing off of the ledge and jumping at her as opposed to webbing at her. Webbing at Gwen Stacy ended up snapping her neck in half, but he jumped at MJ, he grabbed her, brought her down to safety, and they had that beautiful moment of him holding Zendaya. And he said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I'm okay." And you see tears start to roll down his eyes because he redeemed himself from letting Gwen Stacy die in his very arms. So Andrew Garfield had an amazing character arc. Not only did we see him redeem himself, but we saw him grow as a good Peter Parker and an even better Spider-Man in this film. Now, over to OG Tobey Maguire. I mean, what we grew up with. Tobey Maguire was everything we could ask for. He came on the screen as sweet as can be, which is the version of Peter Parker that so many people love. You know, just a sweet, dorky version of Spider-Man. And, or as Andrew Garfield would say, a hip youth pastor. And he brought us everything we needed. He brought us the grounding of the character. What I thought was so great about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is even though he came in much later in the film, he kind of felt like he was the glue of the whole end of the film. I mean, he had that amazing moment where he stopped Tom Holland's Spider-Man from killing the Green Goblin. You know, that moment right there where they're looking eye to eye and he's holding the Goblin glider up and he's looking at Tom Holland in the eye. You could tell that Tobey Maguire was kind of the father figure to these other two Spider-Man. It was like we had the father figure in Tobey Maguire. We had the young adult version, which was Andrew Garfield, and then we had the young teen growing into adulthood in Tom Holland. And I thought those three dynamics played so well together. I mean, Tobey Maguire's Tobey Maguire. He looked great in the suit. I love the callbacks that they had to all the original movies, whether that was the Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire movies. We got the famous line when Dr. Octopus says, "Peter, my dear, my dear boy, how are you?" And he said, "Trying to do better." Like, we got those lines. We got those moments of Andrew Garfield cracking Tobey Maguire's back. We got so much from our two beloved Spider-Men. And then let's get to Tom Holland. Like I said, Tom Holland, I think, finally grew up before our very eyes. And what a lot of people don't appreciate is the buildup from Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home. We saw a young Peter Parker grow from a 14-year-old kid to an 18-year-old young adult in this film. And it's beautiful. I mean, honestly, it kind of makes me emotional because I never thought I would see anything like this on the big screen. But we saw Tom Holland finally grow up. We saw him take charge. The beautiful moment where they're on the statue of Rogers, I should say, and he says, "We need to learn how to work as a team." And he said, "I'm not trying to brag here, but I'm part of the Avengers." And Tobey Maguire's like, "That's awesome. What is that?" And Andrew Garfield chimes in. He's like, "Is that a band? Are you in a band?" Like, those moments right there are just so good. The interactions of all three of the Spider-Man could not have gone any better. We've got the epic landing together right at the very end where they're all in their stances. They all had something to do, which is something that I thought wasn't going to be happening in this movie. I thought we were going to have kind of Tom Holland leading the forward march, and then, just kind of two other Spider-Man fighting off in the background, but each of them had something very important to do. All right, now let's talk about the villains really quick. Alfred Molina was incredible as Dr. Octopus. I'm so glad that we have de-aging technology, because there is no other Dr. Octopus in my eyes. He had to be in this film, and he did such a good job. And I love the fact that the characters, the villains themselves, had growth, especially Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin and Electro. Dr. Octopus went from automatically wanting to kill Peter Parker and find Peter Parker and have the power of the world in the palm of his hands again, or the power of the sun in the palm of his hands again, to ended up basically saving the day with Spider-Man and stopping Electro, who was super OP in this movie. And I loved it because, Jamie Foxx needed that redemption after being a electric Smurf in the last movie that he was in. But I love the fact that Alfred Molina had a lot of his growth. He got control back over his arms and ended up basically being a good guy, and Alfred Molina just killed him. Now, let's go to Jamie Foxx's Electro. He's no longer blue in this film. We get the comic book accurate lightning bolts coming from his head at the very end. And Jamie Foxx is just one of the best actors, I think, out there in Hollywood right now. His charisma explodes off the screen. He pops off with anybody he's on screen with. He just pops off as being one of the best characters in that moment. And I thought that he had a very good character arc where he struggles with wanting to have power. And he struggles with, and that's something that I thought we weren't going to see. I thought it was going to be, we're all bad, we're all bad, we're all bad. Spider-Man ended up having, to kill him off or whatever they ended up having to do. But I love the fact that they all had growth. And that's something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe does so well with a lot of its characters, is it gives them growth from the beginning of the movie to the end. And Electro finally had growth. He came to a realization that, hey, he didn't want this power anymore. And it took Dr. Octopus stopping him, but at the end, he had that beautiful moment with him and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, where he says that he thought Spider-Man was going to be black, of course bringing in the future, which was going to be Miles Morales. But they had that beautiful moment. I thought Electro was amazing. Now, William Dafoe stole the show. He, for me, stole the entire movie. He was menacing. He was terrifying. To see him come back to the role of Green Goblin and give everything he got. And, he was even doing his own stunts. And that's something that I had to just, respect to the OG. The Green Goblin is what I would say is Spider-Man's number one menace. I don't think Spider-Man really has a good number one overall villain. I think Venom's up there. But Green Goblin is especially in our universe, Spider-Man's biggest threat. And he was menacing. He killed Aunt May. Big shocker there, I know. There's so much I could say about this movie, of course. I wanted to talk about Aunt May, but trying to hit just a couple of the big points here. But Green Goblin was menacing. The acting was awesome. I think one of the creepiest parts is when Spider-Man's on him dropping elbows and he's just laughing. That was a very Joker-esque moment from the comic books in DC. I know we don't talk about DC a lot on this channel, but I love that. Just, I'm out of my mind, scary, crazy, and there's nothing you can do about it. That was so cool. His acting chops just took it away. I'm so glad that he bought back into the Green Goblin character. He was the runaway star for me. Beautiful moment where he had the fake out of, we all thought he was going to kill off Tobey Maguire, but he didn't. I heard the plan was originally to kill off Tobey Maguire, but when seeing Tobey Maguire back on screen, Marvel was like, all right, let's erase that real quick because this is too good. But he absolutely stole the show for me. And I love the fact that we ended with him kind of just staring off into the sunset. There wasn't some big monologue with him going, I'm sorry, Peter, I can't believe what all I've done. You just got that feeling of man, I know what I've done. And you could feel the weight of the world just on the Goblin's shoulders right at the very end. And I like the fact that he almost died by his own glider again. That would have been super cool if he actually did die. Because it would have been so powerful. But, I'm glad that they didn't have some major death. Because I think, when not knowing what was going to happen, when Peter Parker no longer existed in anybody's minds, I think that has a little bit more weight than maybe the Goblin or Tobey Maguire Spider-Man dying. I know some of you might not agree, but I think that truly kind of just solidified the climax of the movie. There's just so much I could say. I'm such a giant nerd, so I apologize if this got a little spacey. But all in all, Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm giving it a 9.8 Avengers Endgame for me has a 9.9. Avengers Infinity War has a 9.8. So it's right up there in that upper echelon. No movie can ever get a 10 because you can't go above a 10. But it is right up there in the greatest movies for me of all time. I thought the Spider-Man blending was beautiful. The Spider-Verse was incredible. Doctor Strange was awesome. The death of Aunt May was so powerful and weightful. We finally understood with what great power comes great responsibility means. The villains were amazing. They had growth. The Green Goblin stole the show for me. So much I could say. But there it is. My Spider-Man No Way Home review. Catch you guys later.